Howdy, I'm Sadie Mae with the Awesome Orange, and I've got a question for you. Have you ever built something and thought, well, I could build that better? Well, today that's what we're going to be doing. My last cooler deck box I built using brad nails. And while brad nails tend to fail over time, especially with movement like you see on the lid. So the awesome one we're going to build today, we're going to be using screws. Let's get started. All right, first up was a trip to the store for some 2x4s, 17 of them. And then I did a magic trick to cut them to size. Okay, not really. I used my cutlass and cut everything at the miter saw station. With plans in hand and everything cut, it's time for assembly. And today we're going to be using Simpson Strong-Tie's Deck Drive DSV wood screws. They have underhead nibs and fast start tips that are ideally suited to be driven and countersunk. The shank is also designed to withstand the swelling and shrinkage common with fast growth lumber like these 2x4s. And just to prove that magic doesn't work in my shop, I accidentally cut one of the pieces too long and had to go and trim it over at the miter saw station. But again, lucked out because it was too long and not too short. In addition to the screws, I'm going to be using some wood glue that's rated for outdoors, and I'm using these corner clamps from Pony, or at least I tried that one first, and it works great. I've used it before, but it takes a little bit more time to set up, so I decided to use this right angle jig that I had with some quick, easy hold clamps from Pony, and that worked a lot faster because we had lots of corners that needed to be screwed up. And then one by one, I went ahead and screwed all of these together. We're first working on these rectangles that are going to be making up the sides of the boxes. I did end up starting to pre-drill before driving these in because we were so close to the edge of the boards. I wanted to make sure there wasn't going to be any splitting once we drove those screws in. Once I found the best way to do it, I really got into a rhythm and got all of those pieces screwed and butt jointed together. And just like that, I have 6 rectangles or boxes. You'll notice I also alternated the end grain. I just did that as a design element to give this piece a little bit more interest. And with the test fit of the cooler, it was time to start assembling the legs. The legs are going to go together the same way as the other rectangles, but there's going to be a little shelf that the cooler is going to sit on. So I'm just trying to figure out my spacing where everything's going to fit with the cooler I have. I will be making plans that are going to fit this size of a cooler, but if you have a different size cooler, you can definitely modify these dimensions to fit yours, and there is a little bit of wiggle room. And you'll notice here, when I figured out how high I wanted my shelf to be, I did cut some spacer blocks so that it could be the exact same on both legs. And then I went ahead and drilled those in. And this time, no pre-drilling because we're not close to the end of the board. And now with the legs assembled, it was time to kind of test fit, make sure we're on the right track with everything. All right, with Awesome Oscar as my supervisor, I'm getting the shelf laid out. I am making this wider than the cooler because I got a special surprise in store for later in the build. Oh, and I got excited right there, seeing it all come together. This was super easy, just lined up these shelf supports and screwed them right in. I'm using the clamps here just to make sure nothing moves or wiggles once we're screwing those in. The other two boards, I just eyeballed the spacing on it, and I like that there's spacing in between it, so you don't necessarily have to pull the cooler out of the box when you need to drain it. You can just drain it and it can leak underneath. All right, with this next step, I had to go back to my plans and my drawings and see what was going on because things just weren't working right. And I realized in my SketchUp drawing, I made my 2x4s 2 inches wide when they're technically just 1.5 inches wide. So the fix I found here was just creating these 1-inch spacer blocks to create the difference on the back of the cooler box. If not, I would have had to take everything apart, which was already glued and screwed, and I figured this inch wouldn't make that big of a difference in the long run. But if you do end up getting the plans, I for sure got that fixed on there so the same mistake won't happen on your cooler box. Now let's go ahead and get those outside rings or rectangles side of the box onto the legs. Or try. Fail number 1. Fail number 2 through 43. I don't know. But I did end up having my husband come out and we were able to hammer and shimmy those down on there. I might suggest in the plans that people create those boxes just a little bit bigger or assemble them onto the legs instead of assembling them beforehand. But once we had them all on there, I went ahead and secured them to the legs using some more screws. And now it's time for that surprise and why I'm making the cooler box a little bit bigger. We're going to be adding a cutting board. I had some scrap alder, so I got it cut down to width and I'm going to glue that up and set it aside. I think it was the next day I came and took it out of the clamps once everything was dry. It stuck to one of my clamps there. I need to get that one waxed again. And then went ahead and planed off all the glue lines. And then on the table saw, I went ahead and cut it down to its final dimensions, trimming the ends, and then I ripped it to width. And then everybody's least favorite part of woodworking, sanding. But I did have my sandpaper here and all the grits. I started with 80 grit, 120 grit, 180, 220, and 400. When I do sand, I mark it up with a pencil, sand that away, move on to the next grit. And just repeat the process until it's smooth. And then I gave it lots of mineral oil. I think I coated this thing 5 or 6 times and it was just sucking it up. Now it's time to finish the box, but I do notice that I didn't show you me putting in this support right here. That's going to be the lid support and the divider for where the cutting board's going to go. And the lid, I'll show you that a little bit later. But this finish is called shou-sugi-ban. It's basically burning the wood or charring it, so it gives it a darker color, and it helps prevent decay and insect infestation, makes the wood more dimensionally stable, and improves fire retardancy. So it's a win-win all around. And it's fun to do. I've done this finish on my campfire chairs, and they sit out in full sun and full rain year-round in Arizona, and they've survived for 2 years and still look great. And if you want to check out that project, I'll be sure to leave a link in the description box below. Put that lid on, and I'm just using some regular hinges here that you can find at any hardware store. I am pre-drilling before driving the screws in, and you might notice here that I'm drilling into the wrong side of the board. So now you can see me flipping this and getting them secured on the right side of the lid, or the correct side of the lid. To put that lid together, all I did was use some supports underneath of it and screw the boards together. And again, then just attach the lid to the back of the cooler box. And easy peasy. Then I burn the top of the lid, making sure to try to get into all the grooves as well as possible. Then I went ahead and sealed the wood. So once you burn it, you can see the black char coming off onto your hands, but once you seal it with some outdoor oil, I did 2 coats here, then that char will not come off on your hands. Plus it offers more protection for the wood. And just like that, we have an awesome DIY cooler deck box that'll fit your cooler, my cooler, and a tasty beverage for a hard day's work. If you want to build yourself a DIY cooler deck box, I have complete build plans available on my website. I appreciate you watching. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more awesome builds. And remember, build loud, build wild, and have an awesome day.